The low hum of the server tower under my desk was the only signal I got before a hand grabbed the fabric of my jeans near the knee, using it to steady itself. I didn't jerk or react. I simply stopped typing. The air inside the cramped administrative back office of the downtown art gallery was already thick. It carried the scent of old paper, faint ozone from electronics, and the damp promise of rain drifting through the open window. But the sudden sound of shifting fabric changed the feeling in the room completely. I looked down slowly, keeping my chin steady. Allison Romero, the gallery director and technically my boss, was on her hands and knees beneath my workstation. She wore a crisp white button-down blouse and a dark tailored pencil skirt. Normally, she looked sharp and composed, the kind of executive presence that filled a room. But right now, that professional armor looked completely out of place. She was wedged between my legs and a metal filing cabinet. Strands of her dark hair had slipped loose from the neat style she usually wore. She tilted her head back and looked up at me. The dim glow from my dual monitors caught the deep exhaustion around her eyes. "Act natural," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the cooling fans. "Just keep working." The heavy oak door to the back office rattled. The brass handle turned, but the deadbolt, one I had instinctively flipped about an hour ago when the tension in the building started rising, held firm. "Allison." The voice came through the thick wood. "Marcus," the senior board member. His voice carried that smooth, controlled tone of someone who used rules and procedures like weapons. "Are you in there? The preliminary auditors are asking for the Q3 disbursement logs." I glanced at the lock. Then I looked down again at Allison. Her fingers tightened on my jeans. The small movement carried a sharp burst of panic. "I'm a forensic accountant. My entire career revolves around spotting the things people try to hide in financial records. But the body always tells the same story." She was trapped. I leaned forward slightly in my gray cotton t-shirt and rested my elbows on the edge of the laminate desk. The position blocked the view of the floor in case the door somehow opened. My hand settled back over the keyboard. "She's not in here, Marcus," I called out. My voice stayed calm, and even the sound of someone deeply focused on spreadsheets and data analysis. There was a pause outside the door. "Luca, open the door. I need to check the main terminal." "I'm in the middle of a continuous forensic extraction," I replied, letting my fingers move across the keyboard while I quietly launched a command sequence to pull routing data Marcus had been trying to hide. If I interrupt the chain of custody on this data pool, the whole system resets. That's a 6-hour protocol. Do you want to explain that delay to the oversight committee, or should I? The hallway went silent. Marcus understood leverage. What he didn't understand was the software I was running. That was my advantage. "Have her call me the second you see her," Marcus snapped. A moment later, the sound of his expensive leather shoes faded down the hardwood hallway. I waited until the steady rhythm of his footsteps disappeared completely. I didn't roll my chair back. The closeness was practical, but the silence in the room suddenly felt heavy. I leaned slightly and looked beneath the desk again. "He's gone," I said quietly. Allison released a shaky breath. It wasn't relief. It sounded more like a beam in a building taking on too much pressure. She stayed where she was for a moment, pressing her forehead lightly against the metal frame of the desk. "He changed the passwords to the offshore escrow accounts," she said softly, her voice empty. I went into his office while he was on a call to find the physical ledger. He came back earlier than I expected. If he had seen me in the hallway holding this. She shifted slightly. That's when I noticed the blue leather notebook pressed against her chest. The offline ledger. The one piece of physical proof showing the gallery's missing funds weren't caused by her mistakes, but by Marcus quietly skimming money for himself. "Come up here," I said, my tone shifting from distant professionalism to quiet direction. I pushed my chair back a few inches to give her space. She quickly crawled out from under the desk and stood up, smoothing her skirt with nervous, uneven motions. She moved toward the window where gray afternoon light washed across her face. She was 37, carried the entire gallery on her shoulders, and had hired me 3 weeks ago to investigate what she believed was a small accounting error. What she didn't realize then was that she had stepped into a carefully planned embezzlement scheme designed to destroy her reputation and force her out, so the building could be sold for its valuable real estate. He's convinced the board the leak is coming from my terminal, Allison said, dropping the blue ledger onto my desk. Her hands trembled slightly. She pressed them flat against the laminate surface to steady herself. The preliminary audit starts Wednesday. If I can't prove he routed the gallery's endowment into that shell company before then, I don't just lose my job. Luca, the board will press charges to protect themselves. I didn't give her a sympathetic look. Pity doesn't solve problems. Instead, I pulled the blue ledger closer. The leather cover was worn from years of use. I opened it and began scanning the handwritten entries, dates, numbers, signatures. He's arrogant, I said quietly, tracing a line of ink with my pen cap. He kept a shadow ledger because he doesn't trust digital encryption. He thinks writing things down makes them impossible to trace. Is it? She asked, stepping closer to look at the page beside me. A faint scent of bergamot and rain drifted between us. Nothing is invisible, I replied, opening a blank spreadsheet on my second monitor. He recorded the dates of the transfers. All I have to do is match those dates with a network activity log from the server. If I can connect his local login time to the exact wire transfers, we've got him. How long will it take? There are about 4,000 lines of network traffic every day, I said while typing a fast VLOOKUP formula to start sorting the raw data. I need to build a custom query to filter everything else out. Give me 48 hours. Allison studied the monitor, then looked down at me. The panic in her posture slowly faded, replaced by a deep, focused calm. We only have until Wednesday morning, she said quietly. If Marcus realizes that ledger is missing, he'll push the board to vote sooner. Then we stay here, I said. I didn't ask her to leave. I didn't promise everything would work out. I simply stated the reality. Lock the door. Close the blinds. We don't walk out of this office until the data matches the ink. She nodded once, quick and firm. Then she walked to the window and pulled the heavy blackout blinds down, cutting off the cloudy afternoon outside. The room filled with the pale glow of the monitors. The noise of the city disappeared, leaving only the steady hum of the servers and the constant rhythm of my keyboard. The office felt sealed off from the world. For the next 6 hours, we barely spoke unless it was necessary. Forensic accounting is slow and painfully detailed work. It requires complete focus, matching tiny digital traces with physical records. I started running the first batch of network logs. Green lines of text flooded the screen before locking into a grid of data. Across the room, Allison sat in an armchair studying vendor contracts, searching for fake company names Marcus might have created. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It felt steady, like two people holding up the same heavy structure. At 900 p.m., the rain finally started. It slammed hard against the glass behind the closed shades. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling how stiff my muscles had become. I clicked execute on the third data parsing script and watched the progress bar slowly climb to 12%. It would need about 20 minutes to finish. I leaned back from the desk and stood up. My knees popped as I straightened. I walked over to the small kitchenette in the corner of the office, filled a glass with water from the cooler, and turned back toward the room. Allison had fallen asleep. She was curled into the corner of the leather armchair, her knees pulled close to her chest. A stack of vendor invoices rested loosely on her lap. Her breathing was steady and slow. The deep exhaustion of the past 3 weeks had finally caught up with her. I stood there quietly for a moment, the cold glass still in my hand. I'm the kind of person who sorts the world into assets and liabilities. The sudden urge to make things easier for her felt like a dangerous variable. I shut the thought down immediately. Personal feelings in the middle of a crisis were distractions. What she needed from me wasn't comfort or romance. She needed protection. I walked over quietly. I didn't wake her. I carefully lifted the stack of vendor invoices from her lap and placed them on the side table so they wouldn't slide to the floor. Then I grabbed my gray hoodie from the back of my chair and gently draped it over her shoulders to block the cool air coming from the window. After that, I returned to my desk. I picked up my phone, turn it face down on the laminate surface, and focus completely on the dual monitors in front of me. There was a deadline. Failure wasn't an option. By Tuesday morning, the air in the office felt stale, thick with the smell of cold coffee and printer toner. **line 402**. I said, my voice rough. Allison immediately appeared beside my desk, holding a cup of terrible break-room coffee. She leaned closer, her eyes following my cursor across the screen. August 14th, I said, pointing to the line of data. A wire transfer of $45,000 taken from the main endowment fund. The recipient is listed as Apex Logistics. Apex Logistics, Allison repeated as she set the coffee down. She opened the blue ledger to the same date. Here, she said. Marcus wrote down Apex. But look at the routing number he scribbled in the margin. I typed the routing number into my secure terminal. The database ran the search for 3 seconds before throwing up a warning flag. It's an offshore account in the Caymans, I confirmed. Then I pointed to another section of the screen. Now look at the network log for that exact timestamp. I highlighted a string of IP addresses. At the exact minute the transfer happened, the command didn't come from your computer. It came from a MAC address ending in 7B4F. Is that Marcus's computer? She asked, her voice tight. No, I said, leaning back slightly. It's his personal tablet. He logged into the gallery's secure Wi-Fi with his executive credentials, bypassed the firewall, and triggered the transfer from his iPad while sitting in the boardroom. I tapped the screen. We now have the digital footprint linking the offshore account directly to his device. Allison stared at the monitor. The crushing pressure she'd been carrying began to ease, replaced by the sharp feeling of finally being right. We have him. A sudden knock hit the door, breaking the silence. Allison. It was Elias, the gallery curator. His voice sounded urgent. I unlocked the door and pulled it open. Elias stood there, his colorful scarf twisted out of place and his face pale. The auditors are here, he said quickly. They weren't supposed to arrive until tomorrow, but Marcus called them in early. They're in the main lobby asking for immediate access to the servers. Allison's posture stiffened instantly. Our timeline had just collapsed. If they access the servers before we finish the report, she said quietly, Marcus will use his admin rights to erase the network logs. He's forcing the audit so he can destroy the evidence. Elias stopped moving entirely, breathing fast as the tension filled the room. Allison's attention locked on the door, her hands curling into tight fists. The situation had shifted from preparation to pure delay. I didn't panic. Panic wastes energy. Elias, I said, lowering my voice and taking control of the moment. Go back to the lobby. Offer them coffee. Tell them the server is running its weekly backup and will be locked for exactly 12 minutes. Keep them busy. Elias nodded quickly and hurried down the hallway. I turned back to Allison. I need to secure the network logs behind an encrypted partition so Marcus can't erase them from his terminal, I said. I need 4 minutes. Do it, she replied, stepping aside. I sat down and my fingers moved fast across the mechanical keyboard. I ignored the standard gallery software and opened a command line interface instead. I isolated the server folder containing the Wi-Fi logs and the offshore routing data. Then I started a 256-bit encryption process that would seal the files behind a key only I controlled. A progress bar appeared on the screen. Encrypting 40%. Luca, Allison said quietly. I glanced over. She was standing near the window, with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The confident executive image she usually carried had cracked just a little. If this fails, she said, her voice unsteady, I don't just lose the gallery. I lose the artists who depend on me. I lose everything I've spent 15 years building. Her shoulders dropped slightly as the monitor light revealed the strain she could no longer hide. When her voice weakened on the final words, the room stopped feeling like a command center and started feeling like the edge of disaster. She wasn't asking me for comfort. She was simply stating what failure would cost. I stopped looking at the screen. I stood up and walked the short distance between us, stopping exactly 2 feet away. I didn't reach for her. I didn't try to pull her into some dramatic moment that would blur the line between us. Instead, I looked straight into her eyes with complete certainty. "It's not going to fail," I said calmly. "I have the data. I have the ledger. And I'm the only one with the encryption key. He can't touch you, Allison. I won't let him." She studied my face, searching for doubt. There wasn't any. The tension in her shoulders slowly faded. "Okay," she breathed, giving a small nod. "Okay." Ding. The monitor blinked green. "Encryption complete. Let's go meet the auditors," I said, grabbing a flash drive and plugging it into the server tower to copy the encrypted files. Allison and I left the back office and walked down the long hallway toward the main gallery floor. The walls were covered with bold, modern paintings. Every canvas represented the future Allison had been working to protect. When we reached the lobby, 3 auditors in gray suits were waiting near the reception desk. Marcus stood beside them with his arms crossed, wearing the expression of someone pretending to be in charge. The moment he saw us, his eyes tightened. "Ah, Allison," Marcus said, his voice coated in fake concern. The auditors decided to arrive early to move things along. With the irregularities in the books, we thought it would be wise to secure the servers immediately. "Of course," Allison replied calmly. The fear from earlier had completely disappeared. In its place was the quiet confidence of someone who knew the truth was on her side. We welcomed the transparency. The lead auditor, a serious woman holding a clipboard, stepped forward. "Ms. Romero, we'll need administrative access to the main terminal so we can begin downloading the Q3 disbursement logs." "Certainly," I said, stepping slightly in front of Allison to handle the technical side. "I'm Luca Montgomery, the independent forensic accountant hired by the gallery. I've already prepared the server for your data extraction." Marcus's head turned toward me instantly. "Independent?" he said sharply. "You were hired to assist the bookkeeping staff, Montgomery. You don't have authorization to prepare the servers." "I have authorization from the director," I replied. I pulled a single document from my folder and handed it to the lead auditor. "This is a formal chain of custody record. At 9:14 a.m. today, I isolated the network activity logs and the Q3 disbursements into a read-only encrypted partition to prevent accidental changes during the audit. The access key is on this drive." I handed her the flash drive. Marcus went completely still. For a split second, the smooth professional mask slipped. Underneath, it was something colder. "You encrypted the network logs?" "Standard forensic procedure, Marcus," I answered politely, though my tone carried an edge. "It guarantees that no one, not even an administrator, can modify the data before the auditors review it. I'm sure we all agree that protecting the integrity of the evidence is the priority." He couldn't argue without making himself look suspicious, so he forced a tight smile. "Of course. Very thorough." The auditor plugged the flash drive into her laptop. "Thank you, Mr. Montgomery. This will make our job much easier. We'll begin reviewing the data immediately." "We'll be in the boardroom," Allison added, smoothly taking control of the moment. "Please let us know when you're ready for our statements." She turned and walked toward the glass-walled boardroom. I followed her. The fight wasn't over. Encrypting the data only bought us time. The auditors still had to confirm everything, and Marcus still had enormous influence with the gallery's board. He would try to twist the evidence. He might claim his iPad had been stolen or that someone spoofed the network address. For the next 4 hours, we waited in the boardroom. The tension in the air felt alive. Allison organized contracts and documents, preparing for the confrontation she knew was coming. I sat at the long mahogany table, building a timeline on the whiteboard, connecting the dates in the blue ledger with the digital wire transfers. At 2 p.m., my phone buzzed. An email from the lead auditor. "Mr. Montgomery, we have identified several anomalies matching your encrypted report. We are calling an emergency meeting with the executive board at 3:00 p.m. to present our initial findings. Your presence is required." I turned the phone so Allison could read it. She stood up and straightened her skirt. "This is it. He's going to try to intimidate you in front of the board," I said while wiping the whiteboard clean, leaving no trace of our strategy. "He'll use his seniority to make you look emotional or incompetent. Let him try," she replied, lifting her chin. At 300 p.m., the heavy boardroom doors opened. The 5 members of the executive board walked in one by one, their expressions serious. Marcus entered last and took the seat at the head of the table. He looked perfectly calm. He clearly believed he had a plan. The lead auditor stood at the front of the room and projected a spreadsheet onto the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, she began clearly. After reviewing the encrypted network logs provided by Mr. Montgomery, we have identified a pattern of unauthorized wire transfers totaling $420,000 routed to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. A ripple of shock moved through the board members. The transfers were initiated from an internal IP address, the auditor continued. However, the MAC address connected to the device does not belong to the director's terminal. It belongs to a registered personal device. Marcus leaned forward slowly and folded his hands on the table. This is extremely concerning, he said. It appears our network may have been compromised by an outside hacker who spoofed internal credentials. I've warned the board for months about our lack of cybersecurity. It wasn't a hacker, Marcus. Allison's voice cut through the room. Clear, direct, confident. She didn't glance at me. She didn't look to the board for approval. Her eyes stayed locked on Marcus. She opened her folder and slid a photocopy of a page from the blue ledger across the polished table. That is a copy of a physical ledger we recovered from your office yesterday, Allison said. It lists the exact dates, amounts, and offshore routing numbers of the missing funds, all written in your handwriting. The board members leaned forward, staring at the page. Marcus scoffed loudly. This is ridiculous, he snapped. That could be anyone's handwriting. This is a desperate attempt by a director trying to hide her own incompetence. He pointed directly at her. You're out of your depth, Allison. You always have been. You're emotional. You're unstable. And now you're trying to frame me to save your own job. It was a classic tactic. Make it personal. Raise your voice. Push the other person until they react. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't try to match his volume. I simply produced the evidence that ended the argument. I stood, holding a thick stack of papers, and walked around the table, placing it directly in front of the oldest board member. This is a certified diagnostic report from the gallery's secure Wi-Fi router, I said, voice steady, devoid of emotion. It proves the device used to initiate the fraudulent transfers connected to the network using Marcus' personal executive login credentials. On page 3, there's also a digital receipt from a cloud backup server showing he uploaded a photo of the physical blue ledger to his personal cloud account last Tuesday. I looked at Marcus. His face had drained to ash. You didn't just record it, I said softly, making sure the whole room caught the weight in my tone. You backed it up. The forensic trail is complete. You are the thief. The room went silent. Absolute, unbroken quiet. The oldest board member looked from the report to Marcus. Marcus, is this true? He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He looked at the auditor. He looked at the report. Then he looked at me, realizing with sharp, terrifying clarity that he was boxed in by his own data. The gallery's legal counsel has already been notified, Allison said, stepping forward. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She was a professional executing the final step. The board will vote immediately on a motion to terminate your employment and refer these documents to the authorities. I suggest you call your lawyer. 10 minutes later, Marcus was escorted out. The board voted unanimously to terminate him and freeze his assets, pending the legal investigation. The audit continued, but the focus had completely shifted. Allison was cleared. We walked out of the boardroom together. The adrenaline crash hit as soon as the heavy doors closed behind us. We stopped mid-hallway. Late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, stretching long golden shadows across the hardwood floor. Allison leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. She let out a long, shaky exhale that sounded like a tangible weight leaving her body. It's over, she whispered. It's over, I confirmed. I stood in front of her, the space between us charged, not with panic, but with the quiet, profound relief of surviving the storm. My hand stayed at my sides. The urge to reach out, to pull her close and feel the reality of our victory, was physical. But I am a man of structure. Boundaries aren't crossed without consent. She opened her eyes. The professional armor was gone. What remained was the brilliant, exhausted woman who had just fought for her career and won. "You didn't just fix the books, Luca," she said softly. "You stood up to him. You didn't let him talk over me. He relied on intimidation," I said quietly. "Data doesn't care about volume. Neither do I." She pushed off the wall and took a step closer. Inches separated us. Hesitant, she rested her hand over my chest, directly over my heart. The warmth grounded the lingering adrenaline. I looked down at her hand, then into her eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly, a promise without words. I didn't just brush it off. I placed my hand over hers, locking it gently in place. "Anytime," I said. 4 days later, the gallery hosted its quarterly exhibition opening. The harsh fluorescent audit lights were gone, replaced with warm, dramatic gallery lighting. A string quartet played softly in the corner. The space was alive with patrons, artists, and board members. I stood near the back in a dark suit, holding a glass of sparkling water, watching Allison move through the crowd. She was radiant in a dark green dress, speaking passionately about the art. She was safe. The gallery was safe. My contract was technically complete. I checked my watch. The final forensic report had been filed that morning. There was no reason to stay. I set my glass on a passing tray and turned to leave. But I stopped. I looked back. Allison had separated from a group of donors and was walking toward me with 2 glasses of champagne. She handed one to me. "My job here is done," I said, taking the glass. Our fingers brushed. The contact settled in like a final answer. "Your forensic work is done," she corrected, eyes locking on mine. "The board approved a new budget this morning. We need a permanent chief financial officer, someone who can handle audits, artists, and occasionally hiding under desks." She extended a sealed envelope with the board's vote and a signed offer letter. The decision was clean, documented, and separate from her presence. She wasn't just offering a job. She was offering a permanent place in her world. She stepped closer, ignoring the crowd and the donors. She linked her arm through mine, turning to face the gallery floor, shoulder to shoulder. "Stay tonight, Luca," she said softly, just for me. I looked at the vibrant, bustling gallery, then at the woman beside me, the director who had trusted me when everything was falling apart. I slid my hand to interlace my fingers with hers. "Firm, public, final. I'm not going anywhere," I said. "True security isn't in a perfect ledger or firewall. It's in someone who stands beside you when the world demands surrender. Real trust isn't about dramatic rescues. It's about consistency, respect, and showing up when the odds are against you."